Welcome to What the Flick, everybody. Episode 4, Game of Thrones, the Book of the Stranger.
Just
John
crush some
Iadarola,
guy's head with a rock.
Cenk, UYGUR, Matt ATCHITY, Ben Mankiewicz. Welcome, Matt. Again, you loved this episode.
This was one of my favorite episodes of the season so far. A lot happened, a lot of things that we wanted to see, we're hoping to see, we're afraid we weren't going to see, and a lot of it, they're blazing through the story, and it was great to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, that's funny because until the last 10 minutes or so, I was almost a little disappointed by it. So I loved last week. I was like, okay, but let me give you context. I think a preview of the next episode that lasts about 45 seconds is better than any other TV show for Game of Thrones.
Right,
okay? I love it. But I thought, not enough people got killed. But then in the last 10 minutes, they made up for it.
Where I think the problem, and I hear what you're saying, that like when you talk about criticisms of this show, for us at least, it's like you're missing the point. Like the criticisms are only in terms of our level of excellence, right? It's never even right. So
the playing field is we're at a 98% almost consistently. Then we're judging within that 2%.
That's right. We're judging within the 2%. But if you kill a lot of people in every episode, then the effect of killing people in the next episode is dramatically minimized. Like they can't deliver it.
Yeah.
And eventually, you're going to run out of people to kill.
So what I liked most,
there's still a lot of sand snakes. We can work through them.
First of all, obviously, what I loved most about this episode was the return of the mayor of Baltimore.
Who we hadn't seen all season.
Yeah. And then what else I loved is that the real message being delivered here, and I think this is very clear, was that what's the name of that Dothraki town?
That was Vaes Dothrak.
Vaes Dothrak.
That's the group of the elder ladies.
Vaes Dothrak has gun control.
Oh yeah, that's right.
This was a super pro gun control episode of Game of Thrones.
And by the way,
even the Dothraki are like, no man, you can't bring weapons into town. People get drunk, get hurt.
Yeah, you can open carry a rock.
So the Republicans in this country are more barbaric than the Dothraki.
That's right. If you're against gun control, you're worse than the Dothraki.
Right, I love that discussion that happens between the cows, right? The one guy's all bent out of shape. He's like, they spilled blood. He's like, well, they didn't bring weapons in.
Right.
And then the guy's like, no, but that's so we don't spill blood. Well, there's always a little blood.
There's always a little blood.
And by the way, his guy, by the way.
It was his guy.
And he's like, if he got his head smashed, and then he's no Dothraki after all.
It turned out he's not much
It's also exactly how, like, this makes the whole blade prohibition a very sort of religious thing. It's this, well, I guess in this case, we'll take the very strict word if you're not able to have a weapon. It doesn't matter if you're still killing people. And that's how we interpret these sorts of rules.
This is a couple, maybe people who watch this at home and are in a relationship with someone who watches it with you but is not into it in the same way, which is what I have, and I love my wife to death. But like, and she's into it. She's like, oh, great, Game of Thrones, I'm psyched tonight. And then literally it starts, right? And she's like, we had a family party yesterday, and she's like, what did you think of the dress I was wearing? I'm like, hey.
We're watching Game of Thrones.
And she's like, it's the previously. I'm like, it started. This is right.
And the previously is information.
This counts. We are underway. We don't fast forward through the open. This is an experience that we take in, and we don't
sing the theme song?
Chat about other stuff during the show. And then when the scene I loved best in this was actually the reaction of Eric Bana Jr. to stabbing the guy when Richard tells him, Richard from, again, Downton Abbey, tells him that you can't, if they find out that he's been stabbed, the whole city will be looking for us. So that just matter-of-fact way of bashing his head in, like, we'll distract them from the stab wound with the completely crushed skull. And my wife, she's like, oh, she can't look. And I think, oh, that's genius.
No, the best moment of that scene, though, is when Daario looks at Jorah and he's like, eh?
No, that's right. So those guys, they were arguing, but they're like, they don't know it. They're like best friends.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Of course they are.
It's a buddy cop.
It's now like a comedy buddy comedy.
Right.
No, it's totally. It's like Tango and Cash.
Yeah,
that's right.
It's the road to Vaes Dothrak.
And also, Jorah getting defeated by the Dothraki. I mean, maybe it's just supposed to be Dothraki are good warriors. The dude's really big, or maybe that's supposed to be some indication that Jorah is starting to slip. Maybe his reflexes are going as a result of like his arm locking up.
I mean, he just had that in the pit. He was awesome.
He defeated tons of people.
Like,
and even Eric Bana Jr. is like, well, he's not sure he can beat Jorah.
It's
he
a week.
Probably beat him,
it's a week earlier, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Now that guy was huge, and he was up close. It was close fighting, and there was no weapon.
Yeah.
He's
But he didn't
great
even
with
get a good
sword.
hit in.
He needs a weapon.
Yeah. So okay, let's just
Or a rock.
Yeah, and by the way,
Sand, maybe. Yeah, maybe not.
I love that.
was funny.
The sand, the
The
guy's
guy's like, really? Sand?
right?
Yeah.
It was the equivalent of Austin Powers. Like, honestly, who throws a shoe? Like, sand? Come on.
I thought as he's smashing his head, like he's already dead. He doesn't mind. Like what is already dead cannot die.
Yeah.
I know.
What is dead can never die.
What is dead can never die. I know they're not Ironborn, but still.
No, but did you miss the genius part of it then?
What do
Like the crushing his head to distract from the
He just messed up his whole torso.
so nobody's
and
going to
you
look
can't
for
see
the stab wound. That's all.
No,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know. I'm saying like he's already dead. He doesn't mind getting his
Oh,
head
okay,
skull
yeah, right,
crushed,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Anyway, so like I don't know if this is gonna piss off some portion of the audience, but look at all the progressive themes throughout Game of Thrones. First of all, the women are the most powerful, right? The second most powerful usually are either gay, like Loras is, right? And
Right.
he was the best fighter in the land until, man, spend some time in a dungeon and that'll apparently wreck you, right?
Well, and I think the implication was unlike that he's actually been tortured to
Yeah. Right.
make it stop. Is,
Right.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So
I
okay,
don't
that's
think he's just claustrophobic.
Right.
yeah. So that's a small part of it. The larger parts are again, you had here Tyrion talking about you don't make deals with your friends, you make them with your enemies.
As a wise man once said.
Yes. You know who that wise man is? It's us on the Young Turks. We've said that quote like literally dozens of times, maybe bordering 100.
Right.
So when it gets like when the Republicans are like, no, let's not make a deal with Iran. No, let's not negotiate with the Palestinians.
We don't need to make a nuclear deal with France, for crying out loud.
Right.
You know, we got
Yeah,
it.
you guys got nukes, we got nukes. We're not going to use them against each other. Deal.
Right.
Right. That's not how it
Boy,
works.
that was some tough negotiating.
Right. So, and you know why? Because like a former leader of Shin Bet said, after you retire and you look back, everybody becomes a leftist.
But isn't
it turns out we were kind of right.
But there was also about the fighting to the extent. Well, no, it's a fight to some extent inside the Democratic Party, like over Tyrion's deal. Like you saw, Grey Worm and Miss Sunday were,
It was a new outfit.
they were like, no, you can't make a deal with these guys. These guys are slaves, and you're allowing people to be slaves 7 more years. Like and their opinion is totally defendable, right?
Yeah, so that's a great. So that cuts against progressives, right?
That's right.
So first
And
of all,
against
I
Daenerys.
can't wait for her to get in a chariot so that somebody could be driving Miss Sunday. Okay. Anyway, because that goes against the Sanders crowd. Hey, dude, at some point you got to be practical and cut a deal, right?
Right.
And boy, keeping slaves for 7 years sucks.
Yeah.
But that's a deal that might actually get the job done, so you end slavery for good for the rest of time, which is a little longer than 7
Well,
years.
and
Or
Tyrion's got that moment where he's talking to them afterwards, right? And he's like, look, yes, slavery is terrible. It should be abolished immediately. War is terrible and should be abolished immediately. I can do one of those,
Right.
right?
Yes.
I can do one of those today.
Maybe he
Right,
can do one of those
maybe,
today
right.
because they have a good point. He is very new to that area. He assumes that the masters of Astapor are the same as the nobles of Westeros, but we already know that there's some ways that they're significantly different, even in their base values. He could be 100% wrong. And
Not
cutting
likely.
that deal in 7 years could have just given them more time to build up their forces and defend against
no.
Daenerys.
So let's be clear about that, right? The masters believe, sucker, you're going to give me 7 years. I'm not going to end slavery 7 years from now. All I'm going to do is entrench it further in those 7 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he thinks, no, you're the suckers. In those 7 years, I'm going to transition you out of slavery.
Right.
And so they both think that they're outsmarting one another. And I think part of what, and maybe I'm reading
I don't
way
know what
too much.
authority he has there.
Right.
It's not authority, though. Tyrion's a businessman, right? Tyrion's got the head for business. And when he says that line about, I don't trust them. I trust their self-interest.
Yes.
And that's, he's got that history. He talks about, and the show's talked about this, when he was young, he was put in charge of the sewers at the castle, and he made it run great. And he's good. He had trouble being the master of coin, but he's got a good head for that kind of stuff. He understands people. And I think actually...
But he'd have fixed the being master of coin too, given time and the
Right.
ability to do it, because he didn't realize the extent of the corruption, or that they were just
a lot
like
was hidden.
that they were just Donald Trumping it. They were just like, just print more coins. Right. Then what's the problem?
I did think briefly though that when they walked out of that room, he'd sent in the 3 pleasure girls or whatever, that he was going to say, yeah, the masters are already dead. Those are assassins. I thought that there was some chance of that. It's not really a Tyrion thing to do, but that would have cleaned up the situation a little bit.
That's a Ramsay thing to do.
It's a very Ramsay thing, or maybe a Tywin thing to do.
Yeah, so I think that the great point of that, put politics, whatever else aside, is align interests. Okay, if you can give people the right incentives and align your interests, then you'll have a deal that'll stick. Because if you don't, it won't stick anyway. You can get rid of slavery for a day, or you can get rid of it for a year, but it'll come back because you didn't align interests. And so that's what Tyrion is great at. And so that's why I think I really disagree with John here, because it's not a matter of the masters of somewhere else versus the lords of Westeros. It's about human nature. And in human nature, if you give people the right incentives and disincentives, it'll work anywhere.
Yeah, I'm not even saying that can't happen. I'm saying that we haven't seen even one iota of that demonstrated yet. He's simply saying, I will provide incentives. He has no presence in those cities. He's dealing with culture that is thousands of years old. He hasn't even said what changing that incentives might look like. They have free labor is a strong incentive, and we've seen even in our own country, people are willing to have a war, the scale of which our country hadn't seen before, to defend that.
Right, but he's given him an alternative to the war. They can have the war, or they can get 7 years of making a lot of money. You know?
Now, presumably, look, we'll probably never see this because we're getting close to the end here. There's only 16 episodes left now, right? There's only one book left.
We
don't know if it'll work, right? And we don't know if the story will come to a point, and don't tell us if it does in the books, where that
What
gets...
books? We're still waiting for books, God damn it.
Right, where that gets concluded, right? But, of course, Tyrion has the experience of having a history of transitioning out of slavery in Westeros, so he knows exactly how to do that.
In the short term, though, do you think that Daenerys might justifiably be incredibly pissed when she gets back to Meereen?
Oh, probably.
And that the regular, the former slaves of Meereen.
But Tyrion has this is why ideas matter. Of course they matter. But the presentation of the ideas and the leadership, the tone of leadership matters almost just as much. Because if it depends on who's doing it. So yes, she'll be mad at Tyrion, but no one who's reasonable stays mad at Tyrion for long. He wins those arguments. He'll talk her into it. He'll explain. Yes, of course she'll be mad.
Right. She won't like it.
But he'll say, hey, you put me in charge. I thought we needed to avoid a war, and you're going to be the person who ended slavery forever.
Well, and her way already failed.
Right. And
her way already failed, and Daenerys does have a history of when she makes a decision and there's an unintended consequence, she deals with that and she owns it, right? And so if Tyrion, on her behalf, makes this decision, there's a good chance that she's like, also, all right, I put you in charge. What did I think was going to happen?
When the Masters of Ostapor, is that what they're called? When they see that
4 years ago, did you think you would know all this?
No chance. When they see that YouTube video of her walking out of there in the flames, they're going to be like, oh, okay, whatever she says goes.
Yeah. Well, that is a big part of this conversation, obviously, which we're going to get to in a second. But before we do any of that, we got to go to my favorite line. Come and see. Okay, here's what I'm going to do to you, bastard Jon Snow, and to your family.
Oh, yeah.
Come and see.
Kept repeating
Come and see, but
and see.
Are you going to end every correspondence?
Yeah,
There's a blog on the
I already have.
Tomorrow.
Right. First of all, my Facebook Live video on it, which every night after the Game of Thrones on Sundays, at least Matt and I do a quick review on Facebook.com/whattheflick. Facebook.com/whattheflick, and I labeled it my Game of Thrones review. Come and see.
But what we've learned in this show, I think, is that kind of not the good kind of hubris, but that kind of arrogant hubris. I mean, we saw it with Oberyn. Like, Ramsay's an idiot. We know he's a fool.
I don't think so at all. That's where I totally disagree. If that's the consensus here, I 100% disagree.
Well, you're wrong. Typically, although it's never proven. But no, of course, that kind of taunting, like, it's not.
No, he's trying to goad him. He's doing it on purpose. He's not an idiot. He's trying to get him to come down because he's only got 2,000 guys and Ramsay's got 5,000 guys. He's taunting him as best as he possibly could, not out of hubris, but out of getting him to miscalculate and come down with less forces.
Right. He won't. He won't.
You don't
Well,
think so?
it sounds like he will. Like,
Eventually he will. But by the way, the number of times that 40% of an army has beaten the larger army, it happens all the time when you're smart.
Probably not
But
attacking Winterfell.
Wait a second. Let's talk this out though, right? Because I don't know that you can call 2,000 wildlings an army, right?
Remember,
And
they're
if-
not as good. That's right.
Right. If
Yeah, the
Ramsay's
Knights
got
of the Night's Watch
5,000 men,
stopped them.
like Ramsay, we saw in that episode where he stabs his father. Like he was talking with
Karstarks.
Karstark. Like between them and the Umbers and the Boltons, they've got
And
more
Mandalorians.
men than anyone else in the North combined, right? Like he's sitting pretty, and he kind of knows it. And as much as I like to think, I'd love to be able to say, yeah, Ramsay's just this insane, sadistic idiot. I'm not sure he's that crazy. Like
No, he was right
he's
about
sadistic,
defeating
and he likes to cut people apart. And there's that aspect of him that is insane. But I think he's the dark side of exactly what the kingdom needs. Like the dark side of like, this is a guy who, similar to the way Peter Baelish talks about, the ladder of opportunity and you climb up the chaos. Ramsay is a great emblem of that. Absolutely.
I don't think so. I don't think anything's been
Totally
calculated. I don't. And he'll
He'll come to a terrible end.
well,
Absolutely.
obviously he'll come
Let's
to a terrible
hope.
end.
Let's hope.
But for that narratively, we know he'll come to a terrible
Right.
end just because.
Well, in this episode,
it's
he'll
too
end up on the
satisfying
Iron
to
Throne.
Could you
deliver.
imagine at the end of the 6th book, Ramsay Bolton wins?
Right.
Right.
And so
he'll be tough but fair.
But ultimately, you
just
can't
tough.
breed. You can't kill your own men. You can't show disregard for your own men in a way that will ultimately. I mean, he is not the kind of person who will engender significant long-term support.
That's true, and that might cost him. But Ben, I mean, look, he's not a guy who doesn't think things through. He was right about going to finish Stannis, and he's now trying to finish Jon
Finish Stannis,
Snow.
but I mean, what did he finish with Stannis? I mean,
No, remember they were the
don't
dad was saying let him siege us, it'll sap his power, and Ramsay said no, let me go finish him, and he went up and he finished him, and he was right. And with Osha that he killed, I know for her it was a bit of an occupational hazard, but okay, I made that joke in my Facebook Live too.
no, that was an OSHA joke.
Oh, it's an Osha joke. Okay, for Osha, he had already thought through what she was going to do. I mean, he's
Yeah.
reminds me of Littlefinger. That's a good point.
Right.
He's 7 steps ahead of everybody. That is not a dumb
He's not
guy.
7 steps ahead of something. He's
Nice.
7 steps ahead of a captive who was weaponless. Yeah, great. He tricked Osha. Good one.
That
You
was
could
her
have
best
killed her in
bet, yeah.
100 different
Listen,
ways.
all I'm going to say is don't underestimate Ramsay. I think he's
not
got
quite- it's
4 or
not-
5 more episodes before we see him.
It's not underestimating him. He seized power. He made a mistake, I think, by killing his father. He is not smart enough. I've not seen any indication that he is smart enough. And beating, I mean, just killing Stannis, he allowed Sansa and Theon
Stannis'
to
army
escape.
sucked.
He's got the Ironborn against him if they ever get their act together but I mean, he does. They could come help. I mean, they're useless long term because they're like the worst people. Actually, secretly, they're like the worst people in the books, right?
Yeah, most of the mainland don't even know that they exist.
Is that right?
No, I'm kidding. But they suck. But Stannis' army had already been devastated by blizzards, the likes of which we'd never seen before. It was a fraction of what it had previously been. And what Ramsay doesn't know, and we learned in the section of the episode with Peter Baelish, is that for the first time in the entire run of the series, the Knights of the Vale are going to be deployed. This is a force that has not seen any action. They are at 100% strength. They've never, that area has never been invaded and conquered because of the strength of their defenses, but also their knights. And now they are going to be deployed against Winterfell. I don't know that they can siege a castle necessarily, but if Ramsay leaves his castle, he will be destroyed.
No. Let's just be clear about this. So I think what Ramsay's doing is smart. I would try to lure Jon Snow in, finish him so I don't have to worry about that while he's weak and doesn't have time to collect his
Doesn't have
forces.
time to hook up with the Knights of the
Now,
Vale.
as it turns out, fate is against Ramsay Bolton, and fate/Littlefinger, because Littlefinger has that great line, time to join the fray.
But he didn't know.
Right? And so it's clear that Littlefinger
maybe he's
is
joining
gonna
the
come
phrase.
in.
That's because he's like George W. Bush. He hasn't thought it through. He hasn't checked. He doesn't have spies everywhere. He doesn't know what's going on.
That's a fair point that he doesn't have enough
It's all
spies.
visceral to him. And so an immediate thing is if I'm fighting 4 guys and I got 9 guys and I have a half hour, you're like, let's draw those 4 guys out, finish them now before they use their phones and get 10 more guys. Like, I got that part of it.
Yeah.
That's not, this is a big, much more is at stake than beating 2,000 guys.
Well,
Right, but I think you have to look at Ramsay as acting on the information he does have, right? And if he just thinks that it's just Jon Snow at Castle Black, okay, fair enough, right?
Yeah.
What Littlefinger knows is that Sansa's going up there and is going to fight to get Winterfell back. And as much as Sansa may have made it up to Castle Black, Ramsay doesn't know that Littlefinger is waiting in the wings with the Knights of the Vale. If he knows that, I think he doesn't try and provoke.
Then he doesn't say
Then
come
check.
and see.
Then you
Yeah.
check. You
But
find
how do you
out.
check? What's he supposed to do?
I don't
Look
know.
on
You
the
check
web?
anything. We have no evidence
send
he's ever
My
checked
final
this.
thought on this is I actually think Ramsay Bolton is several steps ahead of others. But the problem is Littlefinger is
25 steps ahead.
Exactly. Littlefinger is so far ahead of everyone that they couldn't possibly see him coming.
He spent 3 episodes buying a falcon.
So we
I
think,
don't know what
and
he's
his
got.
Littlefinger's goal to go to head back to what's the
So Littlefinger is going to go kill the Boltons.
Where's the
King's
capital
Landing?
kid? Tulsa?
Winterfell.
King's Landing. Thank you. So because he's not going to get, obviously he knows Jon Snow's alive. Or he doesn't know he even died in the first place. That's news to him. But he figures Jon Snow's there. So does he think he could get Winterfell, or is he looking for King's Landing?
No, he's going to do a pincer move on Bolton's presumably, and then secure Winterfell. But in how that translates into him being the leader of everyone at King's Landing, I have no idea because he's 25 steps ahead of me.
Right.
I mean, if he had all the forces of the North, maybe he could theoretically. I don't think that's enough to conquer everything.
But look, it's Peter Baelish. He thought this through 20 years ago. Okay, so I mean, him killing Lord Arryn. Was it Arryn? That's the
John
former
Arryn.
John Arryn, right? Him killing John Arryn is so far ahead, so that in a chess move that it's like 3 chess games ahead, right? So yeah, he's got to figure it out. He definitely has a plan. We just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
Right.
By the way, really fast, we don't often do this, and it doesn't matter now. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but the letter that is sent, it does exist in the book. It happens at a very different time, which drastically changes your evaluation of what happens with Jon Snow that has already been resolved. But that, and also there's a couple of other characters that are in Winterfell. It's really interesting. They don't have time to cover all that in the show, obviously, but this is just one more situation in which you should read the books because there's some cool stuff that is not going to happen in the show, but that did happen in the books.
So a
at
couple
Winterfell
things
with Ramsay and all that.
around the scene with the letter. I love that Tormund's making eyes at Brienne.
Yeah, I love
Right?
that. That's
that
hilarious.
seems hilarious.
He's
And
like, she's kind of like a bear.
right. He's looking at her, and she doesn't know what to do with it. And then Ed looks, and he's like,
Like, is this on? I think this is on.
Right. yeah, that was a great little scene. I liked the scenes between Sansa and Jon in this one.
Sure, that was
right?
nice.
Like Sansa has an awareness of how awful she was, and that was a really great moment to see. And then she's the one talking Jon into going and fighting for Winterfell.
Right, but now he has to, hopefully, in light of our previous conversation, now he has to step up and go, yeah, okay, we're going to do it, but we're not going to do it because we're angry, like only because now we gotta think it through. It's okay if we go. It's okay if we go in 6 weeks, like or whatever, or some period.
Gather
of time.
allies.
Right,
And
yeah.
all that. Yeah.
Yeah, no question. You got to gather allies. Nobody's that dumb, right?
Right.
And certainly not Jon Snow.
Now, speaking of allies, we have to talk about just the insanity that's going to happen in King's Landing.
Real quick first,
Right.
before
Well, that's the
because we
lining up
touched
of
on-
interest that you were talking
Yes,
about.
but like so, real quick, interesting the Brienne, Melisandre, Davos
Yes.
conversation. Like
Davos doesn't know
Davos doesn't know.
about Shireen being burned. That was revealed.
Right? He still doesn't know.
Where was he? He was. Oh, he was. They sent him away. Right. They sent him away. Right for that. So he still doesn't know. Right. So that's gonna bother him.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
and it already
and-
bothers him that Melisandre's like, yeah, I'm with the prince that was promised Jon.
Yeah.
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 And she's like, I thought.
Yeah, it doesn't.
I thought
Right.
that
It doesn't
was fair.
bother him like morally. It bothers him like, who are you? Like
Yeah.
what kind of? Yeah.
Yeah.
She's also coming across as much more tired now since we've seen her true form. But also, we have to recognize that while the scenes with Sansa and Jon were great, it's also the first meeting of Starks
Yep,
since
Starks,
the
right.
very beginning. I don't even think they'd spoken yet. But we've had so many close calls at the Red Wedding, at Craster's Keep, at the Bloody Gate, basically, with Sansa and Arya. And we keep almost having them come together and then them being pushed apart. And it felt like that's what was being set up at the end of last episode with Jon Snow walking away. But they defied the expectation by actually having them meet, which is something we haven't seen after all these years.
So that was, very satisfactory. Also satisfactory was Brienne saying, no, he told me right before I executed him.
Right. So so Stannis is dead.
Unless she's lying.
Unless
But
she's
yeah.
lying.
No,
I
Yeah.
don't think Brienne's
1,000% that.
Yeah, I
Right.
think so. She doesn't lie.
And then Onion Knight's like, what? He was kind of my butt. Never mind.
Just as well.
And it's a nice reminder that she was so devoted to Renly. We haven't heard about that in a long time, but that was her driving thing back in the day.
And she doesn't quite know that the lady in red did the vagina monster, but she has an inkling.
She has an inkling
right,
that that woman was behind it. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she put
Where
them
there's
on
smoke,
notice.
there's fire.
All right, so let's talk about King's Landing, which is going to fall apart by the end of the season. It just has to happen, right?
I'm sorry, right before King's Landing, just to
Oh,
finish
you
that
guys
thought. Sorry, just to finish that thought, is that, look, Melisandre's character is so great, it's so Game of Thrones, because, like, the whole audience is like Davos Seaworth. They're like, wait, you're enormously powerful, you brought someone back to life, you drank poison, you had and didn't die, you had a vagina monster, yet you don't know what the fuck you're doing. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Isn't it weird that a person can do all that and yet not know what they're doing? Yeah. And so Davos is like, I don't get it.
That's to me what his look was. It wasn't
Yeah.
like, it wasn't how could she have betrayed Stannis? It's like, wait a minute, I was right the first time. They're just burning people for nothing. Like they don't know what
she's
powerful, but she doesn't know what
this
she's
isn't
doing.
about God. This is about magic tricks.
Right, this is about-
I think that's what Davos thinks.
Right.
And he's
Or magic,
we have no idea
very least.
Right.
to what degree he's right. Okay.
All
yes.
right, so King's Landing, right? Finally. So we see what I'm most interested in is the machinations with Jaime and Cersei, and they're talking to the Queen of Thorns,
and
saying,
and Uncle Kevin.
And Uncle Kevin, bring in the Tyrell army, right? They're going to bring in the Tyrell army, take out the Faith Militant. Like, that's going to be a bloodbath, right? We all think that that's going to be civil war in
How many
the
Faith
capital?
Militant are there?
Thousands at the very least.
lot.
Yeah.
Oh.
But
Okay,
they're not knights.
So
A small fraction of that number of knights
Right.
could sweep through them.
So look, I don't mind like the Civil War and the Faith Militants. That's going to be bloody, yada yada. They've been through bloody things, and they don't mind killing people, and it's I think going to be relatively easy. But it probably won't be, given what Matt is saying. But that's not my concern. My concern is, wait, if you thought you could just kill all the Faith Militants and have a civil war on your hands, but rescue Marjorie and Loras, so why didn't you do that months ago?
Right, that's my main note.
Like, the Queen of Thorns is supposed to be super smart. Like, I'm like, if I was in that room, I'd be like, whoa, we're going to get him killed.
I would have thought about earlier getting the army. Like, how is she convinced?
Yeah, but you can't have both things.
You can't be convinced that quickly that this is the way to go,
Well, I
or
think-
you would have thought
It's
about
not
it
the
before.
same
moment-
situation, though. If she might have thought, I'll try diplomacy, at some
Right.
point he'll crack. It's been months now,
Right,
and they
and I
haven't
think
cracked.
what the Queen of Thorns was waiting for, what Olenna was waiting for, was the confirmation that she gets from Jaime and Cersei that Marjorie's going to have to do that same walk. And at that point, Olenna's like, "Oh no, that's not happening." Right?
Maybe.
She's already said that, but now that there's real confirmation, she's like, "Okay, blood in the streets."
Or maybe that she needed Cersei to come to her. Maybe she was waiting for
Maybe.
maybe that she wasn't going to reach out to them because she wouldn't trust them, and that at least this moment of by throwing them out, making them fairly desperate, that she's at least moderately confident that in this limited aspect she can trust.
I think we're going to see the Tyrells try and take the throne.
Yeah, I was just
properly.
thinking, you don't invite them into the city. First of all, the Mad
Right.
King did that with the Lannisters, and we know how that ended up.
Right.
You bring in that army against, like, the City Watch, the
Right.
Gold Cloaks, they're going to take over.
And Tommen will be unexpectedly killed in the fray, and then Marjorie is queen.
So then we could learn something
Loras
dramatic
or
about
someone
the-
else.
We could learn something dramatic from Diana Rigg, that she's like way more cutthroat. Like maybe she talks to her Jaime Lannister in the army. And
Oh,
it's
she's
like-
totally cutthroat.
Okay,
so
I
so
get
she
it.
might
Better
say,
them than us.
she
All
might
right,
say
Matt
what you're
solved it for
saying,
me.
kill the king.
No, Matt solved it for me. Like, I'm like, Queen of Thorns is super smart. It seems like a boneheaded move to like, oh, let us stumble into the Faith Militant. Oh no, they sliced the throat of Marjorie and Loras. Now I have no heirs, right? No, she was waiting for being invited into the city. And once the Tyrells are invited into the city, she takes over the whole thing, right? So, I mean, she apparently has some plan that I can't understand as to how they're going to rescue Loras and Marjorie out of the hands
she
of the
also
Faith
has other
Militants.
children. It would be great if you can get Loras and Marjorie, but if you can't, she has other heirs that can,
Right.
that can
And
take
when
over the throne.
Tommen
other-
dies, there's no one left in the Baratheon line.
Right.
But
There's actually like 40 people left.
Well,
in the
but there's
Baratheon
no
line,
one.
but they
There's
don't know
no
where
one
they
left
are.
in that
Yeah,
immediate
right.
family.
And in the
if the-
Baratheon.
And
Right,
if the
right,
Tyrell
right.
army is in King's Landing, then they could just say, "Oh yeah, one of the siblings, one of the other
need
Tyrell
stability.
kids."
I don't think she's that fickle about about whether Loras or Marjorie dies. That doesn't seem to be. But maybe.
Well, so I
I don't
thought
think
she
she's
was,
fickle
because I
either,
thought
but-
she loved Marjorie a lot and really and needs Loras for the heir and all that stuff. But I realized, and I think the second component of it is that for her, it's more important that the family not get embarrassed by that walk than it is to get Marjorie back. So her life matters less than that embarrassment. Maybe, at least that's certainly a part of it. For me, I was thinking, I'm going to get my daughter back. We'll deal with the walk, okay? But I'm getting her back alive. You see what I'm saying? Or in her case, granddaughter, right? I'm getting her back alive. And once we got her, then we're only risking Loras, and I can live with it.
I would do that too.
Right.
I think it's an opportunity to throw down. I think that she's going to capitalize on that.
That's right.
It's
Matt
less
makes
about
it-
like
Walk is rough though.
it's less than like let her do the walk, let her come through it and still be queen. It's more like, oh no, we're not going to happen. If it wasn't that excuse, it'd be something else for her to
Yeah, it's a
get
great
invited
point by
to
So
Matt.
you're telling me that it still doesn't quite hold up, because it seemed like, oh yeah, it seemed like news to her that she had an army to some extent, and you're telling me that the Tyrell army is that much. I mean, there's still the Lannister army. Why can't they do it?
But they're not there, right?
No, the
I don't
Lannister-
think
City
much
Watch
of it is.
and the Lannister army is not inside the city, if I'm not
Right.
wrong, right?
But, I mean, so
Well,
but
and
why
they're still
can't?
kind
much
of
of it is.
recovering from the battle against Stannis' army, right? Like they're not at full strength.
And against the North.
right.
It was
and
the best
Lannisters
army
are out
there
of
was. Why didn't? I mean, Kevin can't get them back together. I mean,
Probably
Aren't
It's not like
rebuilding.
there's just people just sitting around waiting to join the army, and a lot of people that would be fodder for the army are in the faith militant, right? Like
That's true, too.
the lower class people that would pick soldiering over farming or fight for their country. The locals have ended up in the faith militant.
And aren't they back at Castle Rock? Wouldn't that
I
be
assume the
where?
majority is.
Yeah, where the majority of the Lannister army
Or
is.
at the various other Lannister
Right.
castles and the vassals and all
I
that.
got it. It's just like it seems like we're making up some reasons. But I hear you. They
Well-
might be true, but we don't know narratively whether they are.
The part I don't get, Ben, is can the Tyrells walk in and go, okay, we're in the city, so it's now ours and now we're the king, right?
Right.
Like they've got to have something where that's why Tommen accidentally being killed in the frame is so important, because then they would have a claim. Go, oh, good, we're the queen.
Right, but keep
Marjorie's
in mind,
the queen, right?
in a city like this, like if the Tyrell army comes in and when Kevin's Kingsguard forces have been specifically told to stand down, right? Once you've got an army inside the castle gates, boy, it's a lot easier to keep anybody out than get them out once they're already in,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's one of those things with a castle, I think, in a city, a walled city, possession is 9/10 of the law,
But
Yeah.
right?
but then that also suggests that whatever is happening between the Queen of Thorns and Kevin is temporary, because then she'll.
Queen of Thorns is playing everybody.
Unless they're
She's-
working together.
Right.
Well, that's what
No, I
it
don't
appears
think
they're
so.
working.
Yeah, I don't think
No,
so.
I don't think so either.
But they could be.
Yeah, I mean, look, Queen of Thorns is up there in the Varys, Littlefinger, Tyrion rank of super strategists.
Hodor.
Hold on, yeah.
So she's unlikely to get outplayed by anyone outside of a
And
Littlefinger.
nobody named Kevin.
Yeah. Yeah. Last time she got outplayed by Kevin was 89 years ago.
All right, so what else do we have other than the big thing?
Okay.
I mean, there was all the Daenerys.
I do like there's that moment going back to Winterfell when
Theon.
Ramsay's talking to Osha, and Osha's like, yeah, I've seen bad stuff. Or she talks about the symbol, the flayed man, and she says, well, do you eat him when you're done? And he's kind of surprised. He's like, no. He's like, well, then I've seen worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
about
only
to.
other thing I had was Theon Greyjoy, but I'm so uninterested in that.
Well, I think
I find the Ironborn as irrelevant as the rest of Westeros
right,
does.
but what I'm
Do you
the
prefer Dorne
the reason why I
or the
brought the
Ironborn?
Ironborn up is because very clearly we've just been introduced to a significant new character. I imagine we always get a significant new character every year, and I think it's Dave Lovejoy's brother. What's his name?
Greyjoy.
Greyjoy.
Dave Lovejoy. Euron Greyjoy.
Whatever.
But they haven't even confirmed
haven't-
that.
I
in the
need
name.
I
Yeah,
need
they
season
haven't.
9 before I get that guy's name. So the Uncle Ironborn, right? Like
yeah.
that guy's going to be a player
Who killed former
who
king
killed the
Ironborn.
king.
Uncle Greyjoy, right?
Who killed Uncle Greyjoy, killed Father Greyjoy,
Yes.
tossed him over the bridge, and we get Theon coming back home, and Theon pledging to support his sister. Like the Ironborn are not going to exist now in this show just as I hope they work out their internal politics on the island.
Yeah.
like
Yes, that's
they're
right.
they're coming somewhere
Right.
and they're relevant.
Yeah.
Yes. So we'll see what Uncle Greyjoy has in store for us.
Well,
And
you know,
there'll
that-
probably be a King's Moot in an episode or two.
Right. And they got a bunch of ships. And guess who needs ships?
And the Kingsmoot I was reading is a rare form of. That's right.
Right.
Oh, interesting. The Kings.
So where do you think they're going to go?
Oh, so I
The
presume-
Reach.
So they go. You think they go to Marine and
I think they end up over there.
yeah.
Okay.
But the Kingsmoot, I was reading about the Kingsmoot. Like that's the only form of even vague form of democracy anywhere in Westeros.
It's in the
basically, yeah.
Ironborn.
On the Ironborn, they're like the worst people.
And kind of the
They
Night's
really don't
Watch.
care about anybody. They're horrible. I mean, they rape and pillage. They don't. They just think they take what's
Right, but
theirs.
it's the same thing with
they
the
have an
Night's
election.
Watch.
But they
Yeah.
have a democracy.
Even though that's a sort of not even a republic, it's the lords get to vote,
yeah,
not
of
all
course,
the people.
I
The
get
Night's Watch actually has democracy.
It is.
leader.
80 of
It's like a union.
Right.
What's that?
Well,
There's 80 of
Yeah.
them.
But the
That's
Night's
true.
Watch also
Should
a
be
collection
1,000,
of
but-
rapists and murderers and
Yeah,
thieves.
That's true.
That's not
Right.
true. And they're
Yeah,
the only
only
people who
Australia.
vote.
But all of their democracy is slightly better than the Nevada Convention. Okay, so finally, Khaleesi. So I don't know if I'm jumping the gun here or jumping the fire, but why doesn't she do that trick more
Right,
often?
totally. That's the. I mean, again, I had the same reaction with the Queen of Thorns. Like it occurs to you now that you can go in and maybe use your army. I didn't even think Cersei and Jaime made a great argument for it. But
Yeah.
okay, so now, with her, like, do that whenever you.
What's
Right,
the,
but
what, how
okay,
would
but wait
you
a minute.
use that every
Right,
day?
This is a
It's very
complicated
specific.
thing. Like, I'm fireproof. Okay.
Yeah,
So
that
I need to
doesn't
get
come up all
people
the
in
time.
a wooden building.
Not dagger-proof.
Right? So it doesn't.
No,
it doesn't
no.
work at
No,
the
you
top
don't
of
have
it.
to kill people.
No,
to
you
do
don't
it.
have to kill people.
Here.
You're just like, hey, can you hand me, like, yeah, you're going to kill me and rape me with the horses. Can you just hand me a fire for a second? And then throw it all over yourself. What are you going to do now? Oh, fuck. Okay, you win. You win.
They're just gonna call you a witch and chop your head off.
Maybe. That's
She's
true.
not proofed against that. First of all, I want to give them credit because when
They still could call her a witch, though. I mean,
they still could, yeah. I don't think that they will, but they could.
when they didn't see her quite as a witch there.
No, they saw her as a god figure, which they should. So when Eric Bana Jr. and what's his face,
Jorah.
I thought Jorah.
I
no, I know
will.
his actual name. I forget what he calls
Sir
it.
Richard.
That was the greatest
forget
moment
what
I've
he
ever had. And
So,
since coming to this, since Cenk and I did our first show in 2002. Getting John to refer to that guy as Eric Bana Jr.
I thought they were just going to do another check-in. Then they come back later on, and that's when they accost. There's the girl with Daenerys while she's making water and everything, and in the seasons that haven't been as good, that's where they end the storyline for the day, and they make us
Right.
wait another episode or two.
That's why I like this episode. Is there was almost, except for maybe Theon, there's almost no check-in, right?
Yeah.
Like
And even the
everybody's
Theon
got
is
some stuff
something.
going forward. That's
Yeah.
why I like this one, because even in the last few episodes this season, there was a fair amount of checking in on people, right? Like all we've done with Arya.
Maybe
is
the
really check in.
Ironborn was a bit of a check-in, although
Right.
it still moved.
But
things
everything
along
else,
a
It
it's
little.
lets
like,
us know
oh,
that he went there instead of Winterfell.
Right. Everything else,
Which is
shit's
what I
going
predicted.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is funny. I mean, it goes back to the Melisandre conversation, the line between witch and god, right? So if she just throws fire on herself, maybe she's just a witch and we chop her head off. She walks out of a burning building with all the khals in it, she's a god, right? Because number one, she just killed all the khals, and so the Dothraki have to respect that.
Right.
And it's just a much more spectacular act, right?
Yeah.
And then you walk out of the building fairly CGI'd, if you ask me, which we can. Her face looks so weird there. I don't know if it was slightly melting.
A little
They
bit.
did the
You think it was
CGI
CGI,
wrong.
or do you think they actually had an actress walk out of a raging inferno? Yeah.
No, but they don't need, like, the Inferno has to be CGI, not her face.
I thought it
Well,
was
she's
pretty-
composited, so that's going to add a little bit with the smoke
Right,
and everything.
right.
But it was really her. She says she confirmed
was
it was
light,
her
it was
actual
good.
body. It
Yeah.
wasn't CGI.
Okay. So note that John checked into that first.
No, it was all over Facebook. It was all. I want to make sure. No, it was all over Facebook that it was really her.
Right. So
And I
the
look for it.
spectacularness of the event makes you think that she's a god. But as we know with Melisandre, there are not necessarily any gods.
No, of course.
Right? But there is magic. There is incredible things that happen, right? Things that we can't understand, but doesn't mean that she's right or will survive the night.
I mean, the gods, the gods, there are no gods, the witches are gods, and the gods are witches. I mean, you call
Right.
it's just,
Yes,
it's just a
yes.
label, and we don't know why Melisandre is somehow less impressive than Daenerys or more of a sorceress than Daenerys.
I really
Like,
like
bringing
the way
someone
that.
back is more impressive. I
I
think.
really like the way that
right,
scene
sure,
went
right.
down.
Well,
though,
then,
right?
birthing
Because
dragons.
those guys are
Birthing a
all
smoke
just like
monster.
chit chatting, and then she
they're all
comes
good.
in, and they're saying, "Oh, well, we don't know what we're going to do with you," and they're threatening her, and then she goes into this almost rant, this soliloquy about, my call was great. He was gonna take over Westeros, and you guys are still sitting here talking about horses. Like that's all you guys are talking about. And she calls them all small,
Yes.
right? Like she calls them all weak. She calls them out, and they're like, "What are you going to do? Lead us?" She's like, "No, I'm not going to lead you. I'm going to lead everybody else.
Right.
You guys, I'm done with."
That leads into my point. First of all, I just got a note for the record that boy did she earn the title the Unburned.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. But if I'm one of the calls there, instead of talking about how my horses are going to rape you, et cetera, I'd be like, she does seem to have a lot of confidence. I'd like to do some due diligence on her confidence, right? And people say she has dragons. I'd like to do due diligence on the dragons.
They don't respect women, though. Fundamentally,
No,
they don't.
And they're knuckleheads. I mean, these are stupid people. Like, oh, me stronger than you. And yes, you can cut my head off. I hear you on that, right? But you're going to get outplayed every single time. You didn't even think like, well, where's she getting this confidence from? Where's all the dragon talk? Let me just check into it for a second to see if anyone, one of the traders has seen a dragon.
I've
right?
seen none of that also from Ramsay. That's why all he did was kill his dad and let fucking Sansa escape and Theon and
That's okay. That's where we disagree.
Yeah.
I think I have seen it. But
So-
these calls had
Oh, yeah, no
everything
question.
coming to them because they're so stupid.
Right, but Ramsay doesn't kill his dad without knowing that Karstark's behind him. So he's at least
didn't wanna be
smart
alone.
enough to get
Yeah.
that
okay.
far.
So with Daenerys, look, they had two big things that we sort of thought we knew were going to happen. That Jon Snow is going to be brought back, and obviously they had to do that. And we've all been dreading, like, why are you wasting all this time with Daenerys? Like, we just know she's going to get there, and then the dragons are going to come, and they're going to save her. And it was the most
Right.
obvious thing in
Or
the world.
Jorah and Daario, right? Like,
Exactly.
she's-
Well, I didn't-
somebody's going to rescue Daenerys.
I never thought they would actually save her. I thought it's going to be the Khals get together, the dragons burn it down. And when she got up on that platform and she was talking all confident, I thought she senses the dragon or
That's
something.
exactly what I thought, yep.
But it's so much better that she does
Yeah.
it herself. Like either they just made the right choice or they knew what we would expect and they chose something that instead of making her just another damsel who gets rescued by dragons, she kills them all herself. That's so much better.
and I wonder.
I thought
Right,
for
to pair-
sure that they said, oh, well, I guess you were wrong about that. Your Khal Drogo was not here. And I thought it was going to tie in perfectly to my theory, and the dragon was going to come. And then she was going to say, wrong again, Bob, Khal Drogo
No,
is here.
To
right?
paraphrase the late,
Not
great
yet.
John Houseman, she took power the old-fashioned way. She
Yeah, totally. She
earned
earned it. Although Eric Bana and Richard, they did block them.
They did help.
They did help.
Without that, the Khals would have just gotten out.
Right, exactly. And
Yeah.
then and
So they were
and would have,
necessary.
Or
and
she would have had to
declared her
put
a
down,
witch.
Yes.
or she would have had to do that torch by the door first.
That's
Yeah,
right. That's
theoretically.
right.
Yeah, I'm constantly strategizing as I'm watching, like, what would I have done, right? The minute she grabs the
Burned
first one
alive.
and doesn't get burned, be like, okay, you're the leader. Okay, what do we need to do next, right? Because you've proven it already. I don't need to see anything
you think
else.
one of those guys would have been like, I'm going to go get on stage with her.
Yeah, or I'm gonna.
I'm like, hey,
on
what
the
do you need me
way,
to do?
I'm
You
gonna
need to
kill
fuck any
her.
of my friends up because I'm with you.
Right.
Yeah.
They're scared of fire, man.
Yeah.
So
Is that right? Are they scared of fires? I don't even.
Most people are scared of fire.
Oh, most people are scared. Of
So, but they're
scary. You
they're
can
not like
burn.
the Hound, where if it's a
No,
fire,
no,
they
no,
run.
no,
Okay.
no.
All
Nothing
right.
like that.
So here's a pivotal question I wanted to ask you guys who read the books. Was that in the books?
We are not this far in the storyline.
Not in books that have been published.
We're not this
Oh
far.
wow. Okay. So
Also, the
this
situation-
is totally off the.
Yeah.
off
Right,
the
you know, I
board.
read-
No. It just. I mean, theoretically, the next book could have this.
Right,
We don't
but
know.
Also,
But
we're not
remember
there
that
yet.
totally off the book for whatever that express. I read a good thing in Slate or Salon, one of the
Right.
essays.
Almost all the stories, we are past any of the published material.
Almost
Well,
all.
Not
There's
all.
one or
There's
two
some,
exceptions.
some stuff. There's stories that were in earlier books that
Yes.
the TV show hasn't actually caught up. But
and those are different.
But remember, these guys are sitting down doing this with him.
Right.
Like so, it's not. It's just it's not in a published book yet. But they're not like, hey, let's have. Turns out Jamie's gay. Like they're not, they don't get to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's true.
So
Cersei's
presumably,
the
Well,
man.
that would be awesome.
presumably this will be in book 6 because they're
Much
confirmed
of
with
Presumably.
it, much of it, not all of it, but
Yeah.
much
Right.
of it. I'm sure there's some.
I got you. But okay, my favorite part of all of that was she never said it, but the heavy implication was like, oh, so you think I'm captured? No. I've captured you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me.
That's right. It's almost as if she did the Bane thing of putting her hand on the shoulder and go, oh, so you think you're in charge?
Well, Grey Worm had that speech. You will not use them. They will use you. That's what they do. Like that was her essentially being like, no, I'm not. You're not using me. I'm using you. For King.
Yeah. And also, just in terms of the long-term consequences to some extent, a lot of people are frustrated. They're like, man, we waited 3 seasons for her to be back in the same place where she was. She's got Dothraki.
Right.
That's partly true, but she has way more Dothraki than she had
Now
before.
she's
like
got
3 times as many
Right, now she
Dothraki.
has all of them.
More.
She has every Dothraki. She has
killed,
all of them. She's collected them all.
She killed, how many guys were there? 25?
All the calls, basically.
Yeah,
so she has well over 100,000 Dothraki.
I'm looking at my notes. Okay. Tyrion makes a deal that will piss off the Bernie bros. That's what I wrote.
Wait a minute. And the Bernie woman.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
So she now has all of the Khal, all of the Unsullied, all of Marine, right? And by now, the word's got to have gotten around. Like, hey, if you want to be on the winning team, she's unburned. She's got dragons.
And I wonder if
she's got a lot of armies.
And I wonder
that's
if,
the winning team.
Yeah.
Don't you wonder if Dragon the Dragon talk about like telepathy? Like if he saw, like the dragons may, if there is such a telepathic thing, but at least the one who's around might be like, oh, look at Mom.
Yeah, he might show up.
Like look at her doing her thing. This earns a degree more respect. Maybe I'm gonna be right by her side.
It'll remind him of his birth.
That's right. Yeah.
Especially if Dragon the Dragon is Khal Drogo. Then he'll be like, oh, okay, that is a Khal I respect.
Now, like when you say, like last week it was an interesting point. Now you're like, if Dragon the Dragon is Khal Drogo, come on. It's not Khal
You know, you talk about
that just sounds silly.
You talk about the word getting out about Daenerys. One of the things I want you need to keep in mind, though, and this is something I think comes up with you a lot, specifically, Cenk, is that the characters in this show don't have the access to information that we as viewers have or that we're used to having in a modern world, right? So all that stuff can go down with all of the calls, and short of her showing up with 100,000 Dothraki, half the population won't believe it.
Well,
it's
here's
not like they're tuning into the news.
No, but
No, I know all that, but that's why I haven't brought it up in the when she walked out of the fire the first time, because there's like 7 people to see it, right?
Right.
And I know that they can't YouTube it, as we were joking around earlier, right? But when 100,000 people, including traders in that camp, merchants is what I mean, see that, that's going to get around.
It is, but look, they have no choice because of what you suggest. Nothing can get around, and in fact, it's inconceivable that much of the information that has gotten around gets around, and only when it serves them narratively for Peter to know it. Then little birdie told me somebody. I got a message from that. Like they'll when they want to have people find out, they have people find out, and when it serves their purpose to have no one know, because they need someone to make that, I have to get the message that this happened to someone, then they'll use that. That's just, they get to do whatever they want with that.
Right. Yeah.
Mainly, if you want to know something, come and see.
Come and see.
Come and see.
So that'll be interesting, because that was a serious source of disagreement over whether I wrote that I was like, I said Ramsay writes a Donald Trump letter. Like, again, and you could think that's genius. Now, there's a genius to Donald Trump. He's figured the media out.
But in the end, we're going to, not necessarily agree on whether Ramsay Bolton's smart, but we're going to get to the same result, because he didn't figure Littlefinger into the equation, so he's likely to lose anyway.
I think
Right, but we may get an answer still about whether that was wise. You're right. In the end, he has to.
And by the way,
By the end of this
Littlefinger might have to kill Sansa, because remember, he told a story about how they were caught in by Bolton's guys on the road. But Sansa knows that's not true. Sansa knows that he gave,
Yeah, there's going to be some satisfaction when, assuming that this doesn't end with Littlefinger also being on the throne, which would be pretty unsatisfying.
Yeah.
I don't know about unsatisfying. I think that would actually kind of be a badass ending.
It would be a badass ending, but it would be unsatisfying because he's not a character that anyone is rallied around or roots for. But his death, assuming that it comes, like I will also enjoy that. The way I want the woman watching Marjorie to slowly bleed out. Like the moment that Peter, oh man, you gave it a really good run, but you bet a 38 team parlay, and after 29 wins, what do you know? You lost, and it only takes one to lose.
See, I don't want Baelish to lose. Maybe I'm not rooting for him, right? But I will have no joy when he loses, because he had such a great run, and he came from the bottom. He started from the bottom, and now he's here.
I know,
and he's on game 28, and there is at some point when you start going, can he pull off this 38-team parlay, right?
Yeah, maybe.
And you start to root for him a little bit, but I think you're right. My guess is that it will end ungloriously for him. Like, it'll be oh, game 29 at the buzzer.
The
That's
more
a shame
This is
satisfying-
the
Yeah,
wrong
right.
kind of dorkiness. Can we go back to the Batman and Watchmen references, please?
The more satisfying
metaphors.
ending for like Ramsay, you want to see get pulled apart by his
Yeah,
dogs,
by
right?
his
Like
dog.
that's what you want to see. What you want to see with Baelish, the really
Sansa to kill
satisfying
Ramsay.
ending, will be hit for him to see all of his plans go awry and him end up in some little cell forgotten.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
right.
but
That's
he could- he can get
Because
out of
that
any
will
cell.
hurt him more than
death,
anything else.
more than death, like
Right.
minimized.
all right, here
Or-
comes the UYGUR prediction.
Oh, hold on. Or will he adjust? Will he think, oh, this 29 game prediction didn't work. I will take Lord of the something and some money and some power, and I gave it a run. But I like he's a survivor.
Come back next year.
That's not who he is. No. But he'll come back with another 29 team parlay to get back into power. But no, his undoing is that he actually wants Sansa to be his bride. Okay. So that's my prediction. And so the fact that he shouldn't keep her alive. If he was being a Littlefinger, he wouldn't keep her alive, but he will because he ultimately wants to rule with her, and that tiny little Achilles heel is what'll do him in.
Probably by her.
Right. That's probably
I
right.
also hope that she kills Ramsay, but we'll see.
Ghost has to kill Ramsay.
Why Ghost?
Because
Dog's
it's a dog.
He has to get eaten by
That's
a different dog.
Yeah, let's go get him, Ghost.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or his own
Ghost
dogs.
Rider.
His own dogs, but I was wondering they probably wouldn't do that.
I don't think
so
they
it might
would.
need to be
They're too
Ghost.
scared.
Unless Ghost can like be like,
King of
I'll
dogs.
take a king of dogs. I'll take care of you guys, but you guys are with me.
King
Let's
of
go kill him.
dogs.
By the way, again, if
King of dogs.
if this thing ends in 17 episodes or whatever, like that seems like a worthy.
could happen.
They could do the prequel or they could do the sequel, which would be Ghost, King of Dogs.
What if it turns out that Ghost? What if Ghost is Khal Drogo?
I'm picturing all the dogs on bended knee like, King of the dogs. King of the dogs.
Cal Doggo.
All right. I think that means we're done.
Yeah. Come and see.
Good stuff. A lot of fun. Back next week. Thanks for watching, everybody. Happy birthday.
By the way, King of dogs.
King of-
Wolf
oh,
dash
yeah.
back.
Nice. There you go.